There once was a flower, a wildflower. It grew by the side of the road, kind of exotic, but pretty much ordinary. But it was beautiful nonetheless. And it grew there by itself, and it was admired by many people every day. And it benefited from the sun, the rain, and the gentle breezes. And there was one particular person that admired the flower so much so that it stopped by daily. And it gave it, attention and admiration, and it watched how it glistened in the sun in the early morning rays and how the dew sparkled on its leaves and its petals. And it admired it so much that eventually it picked the flower and it took it home and it put it in a glass of water and it set it by the window. And it was very attentive in the beginning. It gave it water, it gave it, light and attention, and talked to it and brushed its petals and all those things. And then eventually the flower became not so important. It got moved to the side, the water became murky, and the person didn't pay, as much attention to the flower as it did in the beginning. And the flower began to wilt, and the petals became, grayed and flimsy and began to fall off. And then the flower, it grew legs. And it leaped out of the window and it crawled its way feebly back to the side of the road. And it began to benefit again from the sunlight and the water and the dew and the attentiveness of the strangers that passed by and admired it, much the same way as the person that had picked it and brought it home. And then eventually, the very same person that picked it and brought it home came by and began to notice the flower once again and to admire these same things that it had admired in the beginning. And it did the same thing. It came back and it gave it attention, and it looked at the way that the flower, bloomed in the sunlight and benefited from the dew and the water and the mist and the wind. And it picked it again. It took it home and it put it again in a glass of water. And the very same thing happened. The water became murky and the flower dropped petals and once again grew legs, and it climbed out of the window. But this time, it climbed further back to the side of the road. And this cycle repeated over and over again until eventually the flower crawled further and further away, until at one point it embedded itself into the side of a mountain because it had grown wings and it flew. But the person, it didn't have wings. So when the flower flew and embedded itself, it bloomed.